House Bill 1866 isn't about safety, it's about stripping rights. This is not about crime prevention. It's politics dressed up as safety, and it's a direct attack on the Second Amendment.
I'll tell you exactly why we're here. If you understand the preamble to Pennsylvania's Constitution, you would understand that the very primary and only reason we are here are to defend the rights listed in the Declaration of Rights. Article 1, Section 1, which again, Madam Speaker, states, declares the right of the citizens to bear arms, not arms that you think are safe, to bear arms, not arms that you think aren't scary, to bear arms, arms that match the arms of the power of government.
I'm appalled that we're here today defending a right for people to be able to use a mechanism that will turn a gun into a deadly weapon, shooting hundreds of rounds in a minute. I'm appalled that we think we have a constitutional right to slaughter people in such a way.
Madam Speaker, I heard a lot of people talk about sin yesterday. And we don't have a gun problem, we have a sin problem. I agree, we do have a sin problem. It's a sin to knowingly let people die when we could do something to stop it. That's a sin.
The chair recognizes the majority leader, who calls up House Bill 1866, printers number 2315, on page 3 of Supplemental Calendar A. Will the House agree the bill is agreed to? The clerk will read the title and a brief description of the bill.
This bill adds machine gun conversion devices to the list of prohibited offensive weapons.
I am advancing this bill in honor of a great hero, fallen police chief Justin McIntyre, who was a beloved and tireless public servant in his hometown of Brackenridge Borough, a community that I have the honor of representing. His family is watching us from home today. Chief McIntyre was tragically gunned down and killed in January. Should I wait? Chief McIntyre was tragically gunned down and killed in his hometown in January 2023 in the line of duty, feet from his family's home. The shooter then fled into a terrified community and went on to shoot at Pittsburgh police with a machine gun conversion device jammed into his Glock, firing 900 rounds a minute at police in an uncontrolled spray of bullets. Can you imagine 900 bullets a minute? I want to very clearly articulate what a machine gun conversion device is so that members go into this vote clear-eyed. These are not bump stocks. These are not pistol braces used by disabled people. These are small pieces of metal, sometimes plastic, often 3D printed, about the size of a Lego. By interfering with the gun's firing mechanism, these devices allow a shooter to fire a staggering array of bullets with a single pull of the trigger. Here is a list of the 16 municipalities that I represent. The police chief in every single one supports a state-level law on these devices so that they can enforce at the local level, because they can't now. You know who else supports a state-level law on these things? Glock. Here is their letter. So do the DAs. Here is theirs. Every single police officer that I know wants a state-level ban on these devices. That is likely true of every police officer that you know. Our police should not be up against these things. It is not right. How can we say that we support police and then turn them out on the streets to face something like this, to face 900 bullets a minute? The answer is that you cannot say that you support the police if you would knowingly subject them to this hell. For the record, I am a gun owner. I carry a gun. I will use my gun if I need to. I respect the Second Amendment. This bill does not violate the Second Amendment. These are modifiers that turn a Glock into a machine gun, making them dangerous and unusual. The Supreme Court has clearly and consistently ruled on dangerous and unusual. The Supreme Court has clearly stated that dangerous and unusual is not protected by the Second Amendment.
Would any individual of the humble majority party be willing to stand for interrogation?
No.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, I was kind of confused, and that's why I wanted some clarification on the language. And many of the things that are listed here talk about what are commonly known as bump stocks. And that was on the co-sponsor memo that was provided. And it seems the co-sponsor memo that's provided and some of the conversation that happened today had nothing to do with what may or may not be in the legislation itself. So the questions that I had were based around if this would include what are considered bump stocks. Now, we don't know the answer to that because the individuals that wrote the bill or co-sponsored the bill are not willing to stand for interrogation. The bill defines simulation of machine gun fire as illegal. The question is that a device that is illegal, or if an individual is able to simulate, quote unquote, machine gun fire, what is that simulated as? Is that you're able to fire off 2 rounds quickly? Is that 900 per minute, which I don't know how you would shoot 900 in a row. The firearm itself would melt at that point, but we just don't know the answers to these questions. And the reason we don't know the answers to these questions is because nobody was willing to stand for interrogation.
House Bill 1866 isn't about safety, it's about stripping rights. This bill uses a vague, sloppy definition to criminalize accessories that don't even turn a firearm into a machine gun. If it passes, tens of thousands of law-abiding Pennsylvanians who have bought these items legally and have used them lawfully will wake up as felons overnight. That's government overreach at its worst. Let's be clear, this is not about crime prevention. It's politics dressed up as safety, and it's a direct attack on the Second Amendment. This bill tramples freedom, and I will proudly vote no. Thank you.
Chair thanks the gentlelady. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Philadelphia, Representative Kenyatta.
Madam Speaker, as our rules prohibit, I certainly would not question the motives of any of our esteemed colleagues in this body. But Madam Speaker, I do find myself confused listening to 2 days now of us putting bills up for consideration that don't decimate the Second Amendment, but that create reasonable, common sense, and deeply supported public policy being requested by members of our community. We have one such bill in front of us today. One supported, as was said by the maker of the bill, by law enforcement, by district attorneys, even by gun manufacturers. So with all of that being true, Madam Speaker, I do find myself confused at some of the comments that have been made. We hear consistently about support of law enforcement, about needing more police on the streets. And yet, we're going to knowingly vote for a piece of legislation or vote against a piece of legislation that would make life more difficult for our law enforcement officers. So I'm trying to understand that cognitive dissonance. We have people who spoke about needing to support the Constitution and spoke about recent precedents such as Bruin. I would quote the rather progressive Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, who recently just said, "I don't think any of these cases that have been decided are gospel. Precedent," he went on to say, "should be respectful of our legal traditions and of our country and laws and be based on something, not just something somebody dreamt up." And I think it is fair to say that it is dreamt up, that our founders could even conceive of the types of weaponry that is easily accessible to individuals with no training and with ill will in our communities. They couldn't conceive of it. And so the idea that we are hopeless because of the Second Amendment to address even the most egregious examples that have been shared today, I can't understand that, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, I hear folks say that, well, criminals don't follow the law, so we shouldn't pass any laws. If that is true, Madam Speaker, we're out of a job. We have no reason to be here. We should not have just passed the multiple pieces of legislation in this session and previous sessions. We create new crimes in this building like some folks change their socks. But not on this issue. That doesn't make sense to me, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I hear people talk about the crime in the city of the first class, and then representatives elected from the city of the first class come here with serious solutions to the challenges facing our communities, and yet we have people who know nothing about the city of the first class who vote against the solutions that we are putting forward. And Madam Speaker, I heard a lot of people talk about sin yesterday. And we don't have a gun problem, we have a sin problem. I agree, we do have a sin problem. It's a sin to knowingly let people die when we could do something to stop it. That's a sin. It's a sin to sit on our hands and act like there's nothing we can do when people are being slaughtered in our streets. That is a sin. And so, listen, I know we have different iterations and translations of the great texts, but the King James Version that I know, that Bible speaks a lot about helping the least of these, speaks a lot about making sure we're helping the poor and infirmed, speaks a lot about using the word of God as a shield, not a sword. So we may attend different services, but the God that I know and the faith that I practice says that we ought to do something about the murder of police officers and individuals in our street, especially when we have the ability to do so. And the great representative from Allegheny County has given us a chance to do so. And I will end with one of the things that's a little bit connected, Madam Speaker, but I will not tarry on this point. I heard a lot of people saying that our founders wanted us to have the Second Amendment in case there's a tyrannical government for whom we need to take up arms. I am not suggesting, as others have, that we should do that, Madam Speaker. In fact, I've constantly supported gun safety and gun reform in this building. But for people who want to pretend that they are no tread on me, don't tread on me, well, I would make you aware there's a guy I know who's treading, and you all never have anything to say about it. So save me your self-righteous speeches about standing up for tyranny when you do nothing to stand up for tyranny consistently and constantly.
Madam Speaker, point of order.
For what purpose does the leader rise? Sergeant at Arms, clear the aisles.
On this floor, we will continue to debate issues that are extremely sensitive, controversial, some might say, but we have a responsibility to this institution and to the people we represent to do it with decorum, as laid forth by the rules, which says you cannot impugn other members of this chamber. I think we all need to be mindful of the language that we use in these debates, and I would encourage us to understand that we are here as colleagues doing the work of the people. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The chair thanks the gentleman, and the point is well taken, and members are reminded we are here to represent our constituents who gave us the great honor of representing them in this body and speaking on their behalf. But we don't do so with personal insults, and we don't do so by stirring up emotions and yelling at each other across the aisle, and certainly by not approaching any of us with aggression. It is absolutely unacceptable. Chair recognizes the gentleman from Montgomery County.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I share the sentiments of the minority leader. There shall be no cherry picking or making any distinction. It is not acceptable on either side, and we will not make any willingness to abide it by anyone, red, blue, east, west, right, or left. It is wrong. It must stop.
I want to thank the good gentleman from Philadelphia County for offering his remarks a moment ago, emphasizing the need to maintain the integrity of our founding fathers and the constitutional rights that were outlined. As we all exercise the right to free speech in this august body this morning, in a similar way, that same right to free speech was not conceptualized in a digital manner using social media or Twitter, and yet that right is extended to us today beyond quills and parchment. In a similar fashion, as expressed to my other colleague, the good lady from Allegheny County, when I first had the opportunity to debate this piece of legislation out of committee a few days ago, I carry that logic into the Second Amendment. However, as a brother of a police officer, I appreciate the good lady's concern and the impact on law enforcement. And I would look forward to collaborating with her or any of my colleagues in resolutions and support for any life that's lost in the line of duty. However, with this piece of legislation, specific items that are already banned federally are now being taken up this afternoon to be banned at a state level. To be duplicitous within our efforts is not something that I will be doing this afternoon, but I will continue to look forward to collaborating in a way to provide clear communication, open debate, and advocacy for our constituents across the Commonwealth. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Chair thanks the gentleman. Chair recognizes the gentlelady from Monroe, Representative Madden, Majority Chair of Aging and Older Adult Services.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I've stood before this body on numerous occasions and mentioned that I am the mother of not one, but two of New York City's finest. My older boy spent 10 years as an undercover narcotics detective, breaking into doors, not knowing what he would find on the other side. My youngest son, who now works for the chief of department, spent 10 years in the South Bronx, the precinct that was known as Fort Apache, the Bronx. I'm appalled that we're here today defending a right for people to be able to use a mechanism that will turn a gun into a deadly weapon, shooting hundreds of rounds in a minute. I'm appalled that we think we have a constitutional right to slaughter people in such a way.
Point of order, Madam
I am a
Speaker.
steadfast.
The gentlelady will suspend. For what purpose does the gentleman rise?
I do not believe that is what anybody, in fact, I know that is not what anybody in this chamber is standing for. And I think that refers to the rhetoric that we had just spoken about. We can speak to what we stand for. We should not speak to what other people are standing for in this debate. Thank you.
The chair thanks the gentleman, and the point of order is well taken, and encourages all the speakers today, tomorrow, next week, and thereafter to focus on your constituencies and your perspectives, and not to conclude what anybody else believes or perceives or what they're going to use as a basis for their vote. The gentlelady can continue. She's in order and may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And with all due respect, I believe I did hear someone stand up and say banning these would be unconstitutional and would be a violation of the Second Amendment, and that is what I was referring to. I would just like to end my remarks by saying I am fully in support of this. I am fully in support of protecting the lives of my constituents, protecting the lives of the police officers in the 115th Legislative District, and all law enforcement throughout the Commonwealth and throughout this country. There is a reason for this bill because it's not being enforced on the federal level, and I support it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, our previous speaker began by expressing some confusion over the consternation over this bill. And like many speakers, both today and yesterday, he proceeded to cite the Second Amendment in his support of this bill. But that confuses me a little, because the Second Amendment doesn't matter to me here in this argument. It's Article 1, Section 21 of the Pennsylvania Constitution, which is in question, which states, and I quote, "The right of the citizens to bear arms in defense of themselves and the state shall not be questioned." Period. Full stop. No wishy-washy, well-regulated militia language. Article 1, Section 21. Let me repeat it. The right of the citizens to bear arms in defense of themselves and the state shall not be questioned. I don't know what's confusing about that. There is no clearer provision in our state constitution than Article 1, Section 21. Again, I repeat it. The right of the citizens to bear arms in defense of themselves and the state shall not be questioned. Madam Speaker, that previous speaker also went on to proclaim that if we don't do this, he doesn't know why we're here. I'll tell you exactly why we're here. If you understand the preamble to Pennsylvania's Constitution, you would understand that the very primary and only reason we are here are to defend the rights listed in the Declaration of Rights. We didn't ask permission for these rights. They've been declared, including Article 1, Section 1, which again, Madam Speaker, states, declares the right of the citizens to bear arms, not arms that you think are safe, to bear arms, not arms that you think aren't scary, to bear arms, arms that match the arms of the power of government, to fight the tyranny that some of us think is happening now, some of us think was happening 4 years ago. The right of the citizens to bear arms, not qualified, to bear arms in defense of themselves and the state, one more time, Madam Speaker, shall not be questioned. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Vote no on this bill.
Chair recognizes the gentlelady from Luzerne, Representative Pugh.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to say I come from an era when I went to high school. We all had the guns, long guns, in the back windows of our cars. We would leave there to go hunting, or sometimes just carried them around there. And when I was growing up, we didn't have an issue of mass shooting taking place in our schools or in our communities. Drugs are illegal. Heroin's illegal. Cocaine's illegal, yet we all have a drug problem inside of our communities. In fact, I lost a nephew to that. And I'm an advocate for drugs across this entire Commonwealth. Until we figure out what has gone wrong for society from the time that I went to high school till right now, we are not going to solve any of these problems. And this is coming from a wife of a retired law enforcement, and anybody that knows me know who stands behind me when it comes to this. So what we need to do is we need to figure out how society has changed and why we are currently having the issues that we are having. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to remind us today and have it on the record that just mere years ago, a platform of leftists in America was to defund the police. So manipulating, impugning motive to get their agenda across, it will never be out.
The lady will suspend on the bill, House Bill 1866, the merits thereof, why you support it, why you don't support it. That's what debate is on the legislation in front of this House. The gentlelady is warned, if you'd like to talk about where you lie on House Bill 1866 and the good folks from Clinton County, the gentlelady may debate that issue. The gentlelady is not here for any other purpose. The gentlelady can ask her leaders to speak on Rule 17 next Wednesday, God willing. The gentlelady's in order and may continue to talk about House Bill 1866, or really start talking about it.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It will never be outright. Gun control will always be under the disguise of, the welfare and well-being of other people. It will never be outright, Americans. It will always be deceptive. It will always be manipulative. That's what every other tyrannical government did. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Remember that.
I rise to bring some clarity to this debate. I'm not a constitutional scholar, but I do know how to read. The cases the minority is pinning their argument to do not hold what they are claiming. Nowhere does the Supreme Court say we as a legislature cannot regulate firearms. I understand that the minority views any regulation of firearms as unconstitutional. They said as much in the committee when these bills were being voted out. Madam Speaker, let me lay it out as clearly as I can so that everyone in this body can understand it. In District of Columbia versus Heller, Justice Scalia wrote the majority opinion and specifically stated, quote, "The Second Amendment right to bear arms is not unlimited. The right does not grant the ability to possess any weapon whatsoever in any manner whatsoever for whatever purpose," end quote. Scalia further explained that the Heller decision should not be interpreted as casting doubt on long-standing prohibitions, including against felons possessing firearms. Madam Speaker, next we jump to the case that the minority keeps waving around like it settles the issue once and for all. New York State Rifle and Pistol Association, Inc. versus Bruin. June 23, 2022, the Supreme Court established a new standard when the Second Amendment plain text covers to individuals' conduct. The government must demonstrate that its regulation is consistent with the nation's historical tradition of firearm regulation. If the government cannot meet this burden, the regulation is unconstitutional. In that case, Justice Kavanaugh wrote that the decision would not bar states from imposing objective requirements for gun licensing. So even under this new standard, the court does not go as far as the minority party claims. In fact, applying its own test, the U.S. Supreme Court in Rahami, June 24, held that a statute is facially constitutional under the Second Amendment as it fits within the historical tradition of disarming individuals who pose a credible threat to the physical safety of others. The court emphasized that the Second Amendment permits this temporary disarmament of individuals found by a court to pose such a threat. Madam Speaker, time and time again, case law has shown that we can and historically have regulated firearms in this nation. No right under the Constitution is unlimited, and without doubt, Madam Speaker, this bill as written is constitutional. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Agreeable to the provisions of the Constitution, the yeas and nays will now be taken. Members will proceed to vote. Have all the members voted? Have all the members voted? The clerk will record the vote on final passage of the bill. The yeas are 101, the nays are 102. Less than majority required by the Constitution having voted in the affirmative, the bill fails.